Union Pacific announced better than expected earnings today with lower volume growth, more than made up for in cost savings and higher prices. Welcome now the CEO of Union Pacific. He is Mr. Lance Fritz. So, Mr. Fritz, thank you so much for being back with us. Let me start with the quarter. You did really well in the quarter, at least to my eye, despite some challenges, not just supply chain. You also had some weather issues, other issues.
Yeah, David, there's a lot to like in the quarter, whether it's our train crews getting a record fuel consumption rate, even though they had to reroute on a more fuel intensive route on the West Coast when we lost a bridge, or to your point, the productivity we showed in the workforce, or the service product that really was challenged by some of those issues in the quarter that we were able to start recovery before the quarter ended. All of it translated into some great third quarter records, operating income, EPS. It was a solid quarter generated by our team.
And you're in the right center of attention right now nationwide, including for the White House, because you're right in the middle of the supply chain, particularly when it comes to those Southern California ports. Give us a sense of what's going on, for example, in Long Beach right now.
Yeah, so the ports of Long Beach and LA, they're side by side there, and they're a critical component of the international supply chain that satisfies U.S. consumers' demand for things. Right now, those ports are tending to be overwhelmed by the amount of product that's pointed at them. Our role in the middle miles is to help take some of those boxes off those ports, get them into a train, get them inland, and help get them distributed. The issues right now tend to be that we're not seeing enough of those boxes come off port into the railroads so that we can move them inland. And once they're inland, there's a real labor problem in terms of truck capacity and warehouse capacity to be able to process those boxes.
So that's my question, actually, Lance. What's the critical path here? Where are the choke points along that? I mean, why aren't enough boxes getting into your trains? And then why at the other end aren't they getting unloaded enough?
Yeah, I think it's really two big things. Start with the COVID pandemic and impact. That's been very disruptive in supply chains now for about 18 months. And it continues to sporadically cause a problem. Probably the bigger issue right now is the labor force in the United States, and specifically getting more truck driver and truck capacity and getting more warehouse capacity through labor in our distribution centers. If I could wave a magic wand, if we could get more of our labor force into trucks and into warehouses, I think a fair amount of the problems would start clearing up.
And to what extent can your customers adjust what they're doing to help the problem?
Yeah, well, they can, and so can we. Let's start with our customers. They can do a better job, and they're working hard at it to reduce street time for chassis and boxes. That means once it's left the intermodal ramp, it's away from the railroad, and it's now in the inner city trying to get to its distribution site, doing a really good job of making sure that happens efficiently. They can hold their customers accountable for making sure they're processing those boxes in an efficient way. Our job is to be consistent with our service product so that an appointment to pick up a box or drop off a box is consistent. And our job is to help truck drivers on our ramps to be very efficient. We do that by improving signage, by using technology. We've got an app called UP Go, which basically pre-clears boxes into an inventory location on ramp and can reduce the amount of time a driver is on our ramp. Every minute they're not on our ramp is a minute they could be delivering or picking up a box.
The White House has been outspoken in this, summoned people to the White House to say we really have to make the improvements, called on the ports to stay open 24/7. Is there anything the White House can be doing at this point that will help in the short or even medium term?
Yeah, anything they can do to encourage an increase in the labor force and more of that labor going into trucks and into warehouses is a good thing. From my perspective, that's kind of job one. Now, the supply chain itself needs to do a better job of transparency and sharing data across the entire chain. So to the extent that the White House can encourage that, that's also something that would be helpful.
Lance, talk to me about Christmas. We hear a lot about intermodal, which is, I understand, is sort of containerized shipping, that a lot of those gifts are coming in containers. And yet, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Union Pacific actually was down in intermodal last quarter. What's going on with that?
Yeah, it's crazy, David. That's a direct reflection of the fact that there's not enough capacity to handle the boxes off the intermodal ramps and get them to destination. So what some of the trans-Pacific shippers have done, the big ocean carriers, is they've put more of the boxes landing in LA to be for LA, for local demand and or for very specific transload into a truck or a domestic box and then move inland. Problem with that is it doesn't really help in terms of the overall capacity to handle that box. So what we're encouraging those ocean shippers is, hey, let's come back to that product where you're getting it into the railroad, we'll get it inland, and let's keep working with the beneficial cargo owners, the retailers, so that they can handle it on the backside.
Lance, we hear a lot about inflation in the United States. Just in general, we hear about it, but specifically now we have supply chain, which may exacerbate that problem insofar as we have it. Are you seeing that? Are you having increased costs, and are you able to pass along those costs?
Yeah, so far inflation to us has been manageable, but it's real. We see some of our suppliers having costs increase for them in labor and in their own commodities, and they're turning around and trying to pass that on to us. So far, again, it's manageable, but it is real.
You've talked about labor. Are you having any troubles getting employees yourself? Are you having trouble keeping people, employing people?
Yeah, so far we're pretty well balanced there. We are out in the marketplace hiring. It's in spot locations around the network. We've recalled most, if not all, of our furloughed employees. So we're able right now to match our own supply with our own demand. But we do have an eye on it. We want to make sure that COVID and the impacts of vaccine mandate, et cetera, don't disrupt that.
So finally, Lance, let me ask you the ultimate question, because you know the supply chain so well. From the problems you've identified, are we looking at a timing issue where this is just going to work its way out over the next 3, 6, 9 months? Or is there a structural issue that has to be addressed?
I think fundamentally it's a timing issue, but it points to structural opportunity. From a timing issue, I don't know exactly when labor and the amount of capacity we have in trucks and in warehouses matches the demand for putting product through it. That will happen, right? The free market is very good at matching supply with demand over time. In terms of structural, we mentioned one thing that I think needs to happen in all supply chains, and that is much more visibility and transparency across participants so that we can all be making smarter, better overall decisions as opposed to maximizing decisions for our own purpose.
Lance, it's always great to spend time with you. Thank you so much. That's Union Pacific Chairman and CEO Lance Fritz.